I spent years building my family's financial future from the ground up. The properties, the LLC, the retirement plans. Then one Tuesday afternoon, my mother left me a 10-second voicemail that changed everything. "You're out, don't come back, we're moving on without you." No argument. No explanation. What they didn't realize was that cutting me off didn't make them powerful. It made them exposed. Because when I walked away, I didn't leave empty-handed. I took the systems. I took the leverage. And by the time they realized what they'd lost, their lawyer was calling me. This is not a story about yelling, revenge, or shouting matches. This is a story about quiet control, documentation, and how the person they tried to erase ended up holding every single card. Stay until the end, because what my sister tried to steal almost worked. My name is Claire Mitchell. I'm 30 years old, and I make a living doing something most people don't even realize exists. I predict worst-case scenarios for a fintech company in Denver. I don't panic. I don't guess. I build systems that assume people will eventually make bad decisions and then protect against them. But nothing in my professional training prepared me for the voicemail that landed on my phone one quiet Tuesday afternoon. It was 2:17 p.m. I remember because I was halfway through a risk report and my coffee had already gone cold. I saw my mother's name pop up and expected something routine. A question about a bill, a contractor, something boring. I tapped play. Her voice was flat, controlled, almost formal. "You're out, don't come back, we're moving on without you." That was it. No explanation. No emotion. No room for conversation. If you've ever been cut off without warning, pay attention to what happens next. For a moment, I just stared at my phone, my heart beat loud in my ears. Most people would call back, argue, beg, demand answers. I didn't. Instead, the same part of my brain that spends all day protecting other people's money quietly switched on. I typed one word. Okay. Then I moved first. Within minutes, I logged into the family LLC, the one I had built from scratch, the rental properties, the upcoming triplex deal, the operating structure no one else really understood. And I locked it down. Permissions removed. Signature authority restricted. No more deals tied to my credit. No more transfers without my approval. Next, I called the real estate agent and formally withdrew myself from the house deal my parents were counting on. The deal that required my income, my credit score, and my underwriting experience. Then I froze the retirement account structure I had designed for them years earlier. Nothing could be altered, drained, or adjusted without me. By the time I finished my coffee, every easy road they thought they had through me was closed. This wasn't revenge, it was containment. I assumed that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke up to my phone vibrating itself toward the edge of my nightstand. 46 missed calls, messages from my parents, unknown numbers, one voicemail from a law firm I recognized immediately. I listened while the coffee brewed. "Claire, this is Evan Coleman, counsel for your parents. We need to speak immediately. There's a serious issue." I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I finally understood something important. The problem wasn't that I was gone. The problem was what stopped working when I left. And that's when the panic really started. Texts followed quickly. From my mother. "This is a misunderstanding. Call me." From my father. "Whatever happened, we can fix it." Funny, because yesterday, there had been no misunderstanding at all. "You're out, don't come back." That sounded pretty clear to me. As I got ready for work, I checked my building's security app out of habit. That's when I saw something that made my chest tighten. A clip from earlier that morning. My father stood outside my apartment building, hands in his pockets, staring up toward my floor. He checked his phone, hesitated, then walked away. No knock. No call. Just retreat. I felt a flicker of guilt, then shut it down. When someone cuts you off without blinking, you don't rush to comfort them when the blade swings back. At work, I finally sent 3 short messages. To my mother. I'm safe, I need time. To my father. I heard the voicemail. To the lawyer. I'll respond in writing. That was all they got. Because the truth was simple, even if they didn't realize it yet. They hadn't removed me from the family. They had removed themselves from the system that kept everything running. And the next move would reveal exactly who had pushed for that voicemail in the first place. Because by the end of that week, I realized this wasn't just my parents' decision. Someone else was quietly rewriting the story. By the second morning after the voicemail, something felt off, and it wasn't just the non-stop calls. It was the silence. Not from my parents. They were calling, texting, leaving messages that swung wildly between panic and damage control. What stood out was the one voice missing entirely. My sister, Brooke. Normally, Brooke couldn't go 6 hours without inserting herself into family drama. Group chats, emotional check-ins, long texts about how stressed she was, how misunderstood, how much she needed support. Now, nothing. No calls. No texts. Not even a "hey, are you okay?" Silence can be louder than screaming, especially when it's strategic. That morning, while my phone kept lighting up on the kitchen counter, I did something I hadn't planned on doing. I opened the security app for my apartment building again. And there it was. A recorded clip from earlier that day. My father stood outside the glass entrance, shoulders slumped, hands jammed into his coat pockets. He looked up toward the second floor, my floor, like he was deciding whether to ring the buzzer. He didn't. He checked his phone, hesitated for a few seconds longer, then turned and walked away. No knock. No message. Just retreat. For a brief moment, guilt tugged at my chest. Then logic kicked in. You don't get to leave a voicemail telling someone they're out, and then expect comfort when consequences show up. People only regret power plays when they realize they don't hold the power. On the drive to work, my phone kept buzzing in my bag. I didn't answer it. I needed my head clear. At my desk, I finally responded, but only in ways that left a paper trail. Short, neutral, unemotional. To my mother. I need time. To my father. I'm not ready to talk. To the lawyer. I'll respond in writing. That was it. Around mid-morning, my coworker Jenna rolled her chair over, lowering her voice. You okay? She asked. You've been staring at that screen like it owes you money. I almost said yes, habit. Instead, I told the truth. My parents cut me out of the family business, over voicemail. Her eyebrows shot up. Do they realize you are the business? I shrugged. Apparently not. Jenna leaned back, studying me. Listen, the second money gets involved, everyone starts performing. If you move out of guilt, they'll spin that into you admitting fault. Make decisions you'd be comfortable explaining to a judge. That landed hard. Guilt is expensive. Documentation is cheaper. Later that afternoon, a new text came in from an unknown number. Heard you pulled out of the triplex because you're overwhelmed. Just checking in. Overwhelmed. That word hit me like a pin, sliding into place. I hadn't used it. My parents hadn't used it. But I knew exactly who would. Brooke. She'd lost her marketing job a few months earlier. Since then, she'd been unusually interested in streamlining the LLC, talking about freeing up equity, asking questions she'd never cared about before. And now suddenly, extended family was hearing that I was overwhelmed. That's when I realized someone was laying groundwork. 2 days later, I tried to pretend life was normal. I went to my usual Saturday coffee shop, the kind where people talk about hiking trails and housing prices like they're weather reports. I just picked up my latte when someone called my name. Claire. I turned to see Tom Reynolds, an old friend of my dad's. He smiled awkwardly, heard about the triplex, tough situation. I frowned. What about it? He lowered his voice. Your mom and Brooke were saying you pulled out because work got to you, that you weren't in a great headspace. There it was again. Overwhelmed. Unstable. Not well enough to handle responsibility. I forced a polite smile and excused myself, but the moment I stepped outside into the cold air, my hands were shaking. That wasn't concern. That was a narrative. When someone starts explaining your absence for you, it's never accidental. Sitting in my car, I scrolled through my call log. Still nothing from Brooke. So I did something deliberate. I called Daniel Hayes, the financial advisor who'd helped me build the original structure for our family LLC, before my parents switched to someone newer at Brooke's suggestion. He picked up on the second ring. Claire, he said, this is unexpected. Has anyone tried to change ownership percentages in the LLC recently? I asked. There was a pause. I've seen drafts, he said carefully. Your mother asked hypotheticals about adding another family member as a managing member. Your signature line was blank. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Another family member. Brooke. Did anything go through? I asked. No, Daniel said. But if someone's trying to backdoor control, you need to get ahead of it. When I hung up, my phone buzzed. Finally. A message from Brooke. What do you think you're doing? Pulling out of deals, locking accounts, freaking everyone out. You're making this worse. I stared at the screen. Then I smiled. Because now I knew. This wasn't chaos. This was a plan, and she'd expected me to panic instead of document. Brooke's message sat on my screen, pulsing with accusation. What do you think you're doing? I didn't answer. That was the first mistake people like her always expect you to make, engaging emotionally, defending yourself, explaining, apologizing. Instead, I opened my laptop. Because if someone is trying to rewrite your role in a story, the smartest response isn't a speech. It's a paper trail. Emotion fades, documentation doesn't. I started with the real estate agent. Clear, professional, unarguable. Please consider this written confirmation that I am withdrawing as a borrower and primary qualifier from the Mitchell triplex purchase. Any representation that I am participating in this transaction is unauthorized. No excuses. No mental health language. No emotional framing. Just consent removed. Then I requested a formal cancellation notice, copied to my parents and their lawyer. Next, I opened a new email. This one was addressed to Brooke. But I didn't write it like a sister. I wrote it like a risk manager. Brooke, this email serves as formal notice that any attempt to alter ownership, signature authority, or financial structure related to Mitchell Holdings LLC or associated accounts without my written consent is unauthorized and may constitute fraud. I reread it once, then hit send. The moment you switch tone, the power dynamic changes. Within minutes, my phone started buzzing again. Calls from my mother. Texts from my father. Nothing from Brooke. That told me everything. When manipulators lose control, they don't argue facts. They disappear. That evening, I opened my laptop and created a new folder. I named it Family Risk File. Inside it, I dropped everything. Screenshots of texts, voicemails, emails, notes from advisors, timestamps, receipts. Not because I wanted a fight. Because if someone was building a story where I was unstable, difficult, or dangerous, I was going to build a better one. Truth doesn't need volume. It needs organization. 2 days later, my phone rang during a meeting. An unfamiliar number, but the firm name flashed on the screen. Claire Mitchell. Yes. This is Jason Liu, your parents' new financial advisor. I'm reviewing some discrepancies in their retirement structure. Discrepancies. That word matters in finance. He explained carefully. Draft forms had been circulating, forms that referenced my approval for changes adding Brooke as a co-trustee and managing member. But there was no signature, mine or otherwise. I want to be very clear, I said. I have not approved anything. I haven't signed a single document since I locked things down. Jason exhaled. That's what I suspected. From a compliance standpoint, treat every request as unauthorized unless it comes directly from you. When we hung up, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was my cousin Megan. Are you okay? She asked immediately. I asked why she was asking. She hesitated. Because Brooke's been telling people you're falling apart, that you're hoarding control, that you threatened to cut mom and dad off financially. I felt something inside me go cold. That's not true, I said. Not even close. I know, Megan replied. It doesn't match the Claire who paid for their roof. She paused. She's posting online about abusive power dynamics in families. Of course she was. When facts don't work, people reach for sympathy. That night, an email thread landed in my inbox. Subject line, Mitchell Triplex purchase update. Brooke had written to the real estate agent on my parents' behalf. Claire has withdrawn due to personal mental health struggles. Please respect her limitations. I stared at the screen. Then I responded, copying everyone. I am not withdrawing due to mental health struggles. I am withdrawing because I no longer consent to my name, credit, or income being used under current family circumstances. Susan, the agent, replied quickly. Understood. I will ignore prior messages and act only on direct instructions from Claire. A quieter email followed from the lawyer. Received. We should discuss next steps. That night, I found an envelope taped to my apartment door. My mother's handwriting. Inside. We love you. We were emotional. Please call us so we can fix this before it goes too far. My phone buzzed again. Megan sent a screenshot. Brooke's latest post read. Sometimes the most dangerous person in a family is the one who controls the money. The comments were full of hearts. I placed the note next to my laptop and looked at the growing folder of evidence. Defense was no longer enough. Because Brooke wasn't just lying. She was building a villain. When my mother texted, just 5 minutes, no arguing, I stared at the screen longer than I meant to. 5 minutes wasn't enough to undo a voicemail that said don't come back. But it sounded like her. The version of her before fear and guilt and pressure rewrote everything. Call me, I typed. She answered instantly. Your dad's here too, she said, her voice already tight. You asked for 5 minutes, I said. That's what you'll get. She rushed in. We shouldn't have said it like that. We were emotional. You weren't emotional, I replied calmly. You were clear. Silence. Then she tried again. Your sister told us things, Claire. She said you were planning to cut us out, that you were talking to lawyers about taking control. I closed my eyes. Did you hear those words from me? I asked. Well, no, my mother admitted. Brooke said you told her after dinner, in the car. There was no car, I said. I drove myself home. My father swore under his breath. The truth doesn't raise its voice. It waits. Why would she lie? My mother whispered. Because it works, I said. If I'm unstable and power-hungry, then pushing me out looks like protection, not theft. My father exhaled heavily. This is bigger than family drama now. The lawyer called. The advisor called. I know, I said. That's why we're done with whispers. I paused. All four of us, same room, same time, documents on the table. My mother hesitated. Do lawyers have to be involved? They already are, I replied. The only question is who they hear first. We agreed to meet the next evening at my parents' house. When I hung up, I didn't feel relief. I felt resolve. You don't walk into a confrontation hopping to be understood. You walk in prepared. The next night, I arrived with a thick folder under my arm. Same beige couch, same framed school photos. Different air. My parents sat together. Brooke was already there, perched in an armchair, tissue in hand. She didn't look at me. I set the folder on the coffee table. Nothing about this is off the record, I said evenly. If anyone lies, I won't protect it. Brooke scoffed. Wow, way to make it hostile. If it's the truth, I said, it shouldn't be fragile. My mother twisted her hands. Brooke, tell Claire what you told us. No, I said. She can speak for herself. Brooke rolled her eyes. I just repeated what you said, that you were done carrying everything, that you wanted full control. And this was in the car, I asked. Yes, she snapped. After dinner. I opened the folder. Then let's check the timing. I slid the first page across the table. Rideshare receipt. 10:15 p.m. Brooke alone. Next page. My gas station charge. 10:13 p.m. Across town. I drove myself, I said. Different cars, different routes. My mother's eyes moved back and forth. Brooke swallowed. Maybe it was another night. I flipped to the next page. The only other dinner in 3 months. You left early. I stayed to pay. Silence thickened. My father leaned back slowly. Brooke, he said quietly. She shrugged. Memory's weird. I was trying to help. Lies collapse when they meet timestamps. I laid out the rest. The email to the real estate agent, sent before any mental health claims. Susan's response, rejecting Brooke's instructions. The advisor's note about unsigned drafts. Screenshots of Brooke's posts. Messages from cousins repeating her story. Page by page, the narrative unraveled. My mother finally turned to Brooke. You told us you saw emails. Brooke stiffened. She's twisting things. She likes control. My father met her eyes. The truth doesn't fall apart when you check it against receipts, he said. Yours did. My mother's voice cracked. We always thought Claire could handle more. We protected you and pushed everything onto her. She looked at me. And now I realize the only person who lied is the one we told not to come back. Brooke opened her mouth. My mother raised her hand. Not this time. Something shifted. Not victory. Clarity. When the mask slips, the room goes quiet. Brooke finally snapped. So what now? You got your little packet, happy. I stood. This isn't about being happy, I said. It's about consequences. My father rubbed his jaw. What do you think should happen? I met his gaze. You wanted me out. Fine. But that means no one uses my name, credit, or work again. Brooke shot upright. You're cutting me out. I'm closing the door you were trying to sneak through, I replied. My mother whispered, maybe we should make it official. Brooke's eyes widened. And that's when I realized. This wasn't the end of the fight. It was the moment the power officially shifted. The room stayed quiet after my mother's words. Maybe we should make it official. Brooke stared at her like she'd misheard. What does that mean? She demanded. It meant everything. My father cleared his throat. It means we stop pretending money magically appears because someone else handles it, and we stop letting assumptions run the house. Brooke turned toward me. So now you're the judge. I didn't sit back down. No, I said evenly. I'm the firewall. Boundaries don't announce themselves. They enforce themselves. My mother looked at me carefully. Claire, we want you to rewrite the documents. The LLC, the retirement structure, all of it, the right way. I studied her face. You told me I was out, I reminded her. And now you're asking me to take control again. She nodded, eyes wet. I'm asking you to do what you've been doing all along, only this time with honesty. Brooke let out a sharp laugh. Unbelievable. You're handing her everything because she printed receipts. My father's voice dropped. We're listening to the person whose story didn't change. That landed harder than anything else said that night. Consistency is louder than charisma. Brooke's tone shifted instantly. Fine, then let me help. Give me a role, social media outreach, something. It was almost impressive how fast she pivoted, from attack to appeal. A year ago, I might have softened. Now I just saw the pattern. If you want to build something, I said, you don't start by wiring yourself into what someone else already built. My mother hesitated. Isn't that a little harsh? I shook my head. Harsh was being told not to come back. Harsh was having my stability used as a prop. This is just structure. Brooke's face hardened. You're going to regret this. I met her stare. I already survived it. People threaten consequences when they've run out of leverage. My father stood. Here, what's going to happen? Claire and I remain the only managing members. Your mom is beneficiary. No one else touches anything. Brooke shot to her feet. You can't erase me. My mother flinched, but didn't back down. We're not erasing you. We're stopping the fantasy that money we don't have will fall out of the sky. The room felt heavier, but clearer. When I finally left, my father walked me to the door. I'm sorry, he said quietly, for the voicemail, for believing the easiest version of the story. I nodded. I know. But forgiveness didn't mean reversal. Apologies don't restore access. Behavior does. The next week, the changes became real. Drafts arrived from Jason. Operating agreements tightened. Signature authority locked down permanently. Every document closed a door Brooke had assumed would stay cracked. When the final signatures were in place, I felt something settle. Not satisfaction. Stability. Revenge doesn't always look like destruction. Sometimes it looks like architecture. The strongest revenge is a system that no longer needs you to fight. 3 days later, Brooke showed up at my office unannounced. Binder in hand. I have a business plan, she said desperately. Events, branding, partnerships, I just need a small investment. I didn't take the binder. Start it without me, I said. If it works, you won't need my money. Her face crumpled. You're really not going to help me. I thought about the voicemail. The lies. The posts. The near miss. I'm done funding fires I didn't start, I said. Then I walked away. A month after everything locked into place, I stood in the driveway of a pale brick triplex on the edge of Denver, holding a box of kitchen supplies and breathing in cold morning air. This was the same property Brooke had tried to slide herself into. Same address. Same numbers. Different structure. My parents' unit sat on the ground floor, protected, written in black ink, untouchable by anyone else. My unit was upstairs, sunlight pouring through wide windows. The third unit was already listed for rent, the numbers penciled neatly into a spreadsheet only I controlled. Mitchell Holdings, LLC was lean now. No side doors. No temporary access. No emotional clauses. Just clarity. When control is clean, it doesn't need defending. On weekends, my mom and I cooked together in her new kitchen. We talked about groceries, weather, TV shows. Sometimes money came up, but this time it wasn't a foggy wish. I pulled up accounts, showed balances, explained limits. She listened. That alone felt like progress. My dad watched car shows in the living room, occasionally asking questions about expenses or maintenance costs. For the first time, those conversations didn't turn into assumptions or pressure. They turned into understanding. Transparency only works when everyone accepts reality. Brooke wasn't part of that rhythm. Her name came up less and less. When it did, it was quieter, sadder. A cousin mentioned she'd moved into a small apartment across town. Another said she was bouncing between short-term gigs, still talking about big plans. None of them seemed to stick. I didn't celebrate that. But I didn't rescue it either. Removing leverage isn't punishment, it's neutrality. One afternoon, my mother showed me a text from Brooke asking for help with a credit card payment. She looked at me, then set her phone face down. "We can't fix this for her," she said softly. "Not like this." That moment mattered more than any document I'd signed. Because for the first time, I wasn't the automatic solution. Change isn't dramatic, it's consistent. A few weeks later, my parents invited me over for dinner. No tension, no speeches. Halfway through the meal, my dad cleared his throat. "You know," he said, "we spent years pretending we understood money because you handled it. We didn't. We just trusted the feeling." He looked at me. "That wasn't fair to you." I nodded. I didn't know how to say no. My mom reached across the table. "We're learning." That was enough. Repair doesn't mean going back. It means moving forward differently. One evening, as I was closing my laptop at work, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it until I recognized the tone. It was Brooke. "I know you won't help me," she said quickly, voice shaky. "But I just wanted to say I didn't think it would end like this." I leaned back in my chair. "Neither did I replied. There was silence. Then she said, "You always land on your feet." "That's because I stopped letting people trip me," I said. She hung up without another word. Closure doesn't always come with an apology. That night, alone in my apartment, I opened the same folder I'd created weeks earlier, the family risk file. I scrolled through it slowly. The voicemail. The lies. The drafts. The screenshots. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt clear. Clear about what strength actually means. Clear about how easily loyalty gets mistaken for obligation. Clear that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting, and love doesn't require access. Peace isn't passive, it's protected. Months passed. The triplex stayed stable. The account stayed locked. The systems held. And every time someone asked how I handled it all so calmly, I gave the same answer. I stopped reacting and started designing. Because revenge didn't show up as a dramatic moment. It showed up as a life that couldn't be hijacked again. What stayed with me long after the dust settled wasn't the betrayal. It was how normal it all looked from the outside. No shouting matches in public. No dramatic blow-ups at holidays. No obvious villain twirling their mustache. Just quiet assumptions. And that's what makes situations like this dangerous, especially for people who are capable, dependable, and used to carrying weight. The strongest people get exploited the most quietly. For years, I'd been the responsible one. The one who understood paperwork. The one who fixed problems. The one who absorbed stress so others didn't have to. That role feels like love when you're inside it. Until it doesn't. Until someone decides your strength is inconvenient. Until they realize if they can paint you as unstable, controlling, or difficult, they can move around you instead of through you. Control doesn't always come from power. It comes from perception. Looking back, the signs were there. Brooke didn't suddenly become interested in finances. She became interested in access. My parents didn't suddenly distrust me. They got scared and listened to the person who made them feel protected. And I didn't suddenly lose my place. I stopped being useful in the way someone wanted. That's when the story changed. When your value is tied to convenience, loyalty is conditional. Most people wait too long to recognize this pattern because it doesn't look abusive. It looks like family. It sounds like concern. It hides behind phrases like, "We're just worried about you," and "you seem overwhelmed." But those words can be tools. And once they stick, they're hard to peel off. Once someone defines you publicly, correcting it privately won't work. What saved me wasn't confrontation. It was structure. I didn't argue about my character. I documented behavior. I didn't try to change minds. I changed access. And that's the part most people resist, because it feels cold. But boundaries aren't cold. They're precise. Precision beats emotion every time. There's a reason manipulators hate systems. Systems don't care how convincing you are. They don't bend for tears, urgency, or guilt. They only respond to rules. Once I stopped being the person holding everything together emotionally and became the person holding it together structurally, the chaos stopped feeding itself. Drama starves when there's nothing left to grab. I still love my parents. That didn't change. What changed was my understanding of responsibility. Loving someone doesn't mean insulating them from reality. Helping doesn't mean surrendering control. And forgiveness doesn't mean reopening doors that almost destroyed you. Forgiveness is emotional. Access is operational. I used to think being strong meant staying. Staying calm. Staying available. Staying quiet. Now I know better. Strength is leaving before resentment replaces clarity. Strength is saying no without a speech. Strength is letting someone experience the outcome of their own choices, even when you could prevent it. Rescuing people, too, early teaches them nothing. I don't regret how this ended. I regret how long I thought silence was patience instead of permission. If you're listening to this and seeing pieces of your own life in it, at work, in your family, in friendships, pay attention to where you're indispensable but invisible. Where you're trusted with responsibility, but excluded from decisions. Where your competence is praised until it becomes inconvenient. That's the warning sign most people ignore. Because the moment someone starts explaining your absence for you, the moment they speak for your intentions, the moment they frame your boundaries as instability, you're already late. For a long time, I thought winning would feel louder. Like vindication. like relief that announced itself, like watching someone else finally admit they were wrong. That didn't happen. Winning showed up quietly, almost boringly, once the noise stopped. Real wins don't need witnesses. I woke up one morning and realized I hadn't checked my phone for family drama in days. No urgent texts. No emotional spirals. No last-minute financial rescues. Just normal life. That's when it hit me. This was the win. Not proving anything. Not being validated. But not being pulled anymore. Peace feels empty when chaos has been your normal. I still saw my parents regularly. We cooked. We talked. We planned practical things. Maintenance schedules, budgets, realistic goals. What we didn't do was pretend. We didn't fantasize about growth that wasn't funded. We didn't make promises based on guilt. And for the first time, money stopped being emotional. It became factual. Facts are stabilizing. Brooke existed on the edge of that new reality. Occasional updates through cousins. Short texts that stayed unanswered longer than she expected. She stopped posting about villains and healing. Attention dried up when there was no one left to react. And without a stage, her story didn't hold. Some narratives collapse without an audience. One afternoon, I ran into someone who knew the old version of the story. They hesitated before speaking. I heard things were complicated, they said carefully. I smiled. They were, now they're organized. They laughed, not fully understanding. That was fine. You don't owe clarity to people who weren't confused. I used to believe walking away meant losing leverage. In reality, staying too long had been the real risk. Because proximity creates entitlement. And entitlement grows quietly when boundaries stay vague. Distance is sometimes the clearest boundary. There were moments I wondered if I'd been too firm, too final. But then I'd remember the voicemail. The ease with which someone told me not to come back. The speed with which a story replaced me. And I'd understand all over again. People show you how replaceable they think you are. I didn't erase Brooke from my life. I erased her access. There's a difference. One is emotional. The other is structural. And structure is what lasts. Emotion fades, structure holds. The triplex continued running smoothly. Rent came in on time. Maintenance stayed predictable. No surprises. It wasn't exciting. It was stable. And stability is underrated until you've lived without it. Calm is a luxury built, not granted. Late one night, scrolling through old messages, I found the original voicemail saved in my phone. I listened to it once more. "You're out, don't come back." It didn't hurt anymore. It clarified. Because without that moment, I might have kept overextending. Kept explaining. Kept funding peace instead of building it. Sometimes rejection is the cleanest instruction. I deleted the voicemail. Not because I'd forgotten, but because I didn't need proof anymore. I had results. For a long time, I thought this story was about money. About property. About documents. About who controlled what. It was. It was about access. Who gets it? Who assumes it? And who finally learns to protect it? There's a moment in situations like this that most people miss. It's not when the betrayal happens. It's not when the argument explodes. It's the quiet moment afterward, when you realize how much of yourself you were giving without being asked. That realization changes you. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Permanently. I didn't lose my family. I lost the role they assigned me without my consent. And that role was costing me more than I realized. Being the reliable one, the fixer, the emotional buffer, the financial safety net. Those roles feel like love when no one abuses them. But the second someone does, they turn into chains. I didn't break them by fighting. I broke them by stepping back, by letting silence replace explanation, by letting systems replace promises, by letting consequences replace guilt. That's the part people struggle with. Because we're taught that saying no is cruel, that distance is punishment, that boundaries mean bitterness. None of that is true. Boundaries are clarity. They tell people exactly where you end and where responsibility begins. I still love my parents. That never stopped. What stopped was the automatic access to my labor, my credit, my stability. And interestingly, once that access disappeared, something else appeared in its place. Respect. Not performative respect. Not emotional apologies. Practical respect. The kind that shows up in signed documents, in changed behavior, in fewer emergencies. As for my sister, I didn't win against her. I opted out of the game she wanted to play. And that mattered more than any confrontation ever could. Because people who thrive on chaos need participation. They need reactions. They need proximity. They need you close enough to pull. When you step out of reach, the story collapses on its own. If you're listening to this and feeling uneasy, ask yourself something honestly. Who has access to you right now that hasn't earned it? Who benefits from your silence? Who describes you when you're not in the room? And what would happen, not if you exploded, but if you simply stopped explaining? This isn't about revenge. It's about self-respect. It's about realizing that being dependable doesn't mean being disposable. That love doesn't require self-erasure. And that sometimes the most powerful move you can make is refusing to keep the peace at your own expense. If someone ever tells you you're out, don't rush to prove your worth. Pause. Look at what they no longer get from you. And decide, calmly, deliberately, what access ends with that sentence. Because the strongest response isn't anger. It's structure.